War Museum in northern Denmark says it has found a missing Nazi submarine.
Have you ever wondered what secrets still lie hidden at the bottom of the sea? Locked away since the most devastating war in human history. What if a deep-sea drone stumbled upon one of Nazi Germany's most advanced submarines and found something that no one was ever supposed to see? Today, we're going beneath the waves to uncover what researchers found inside U-3523, a lost German U-boat that disappeared in 1945, and what was discovered inside left scientists speechless. The vanishing of U-3523. The story of U-3523 begins in the final chaotic days of World War II. It was one of Germany's most advanced Type 21 submarines, so advanced, in fact, that it could have changed the balance of power in the Atlantic had it been deployed sooner. The Type 21, often called the Electroboot, was the world's first true submarine capable of remaining submerged for extended periods. Unlike earlier U-boats, which had to surface to recharge their batteries, this vessel could stay underwater for days. U-3523 set out from Kiel in early May 1945, just as Germany was collapsing and Allied forces were closing in from every direction. The submarine's mission, however, was never fully recorded. Officially, it was lost without a trace on May 6, 1945, the very day before Germany surrendered.
The general puts his signature to the document which acknowledges the complete defeat of the German armed forces by those of Britain, Russia, and the United States.
The U-boat simply vanished. No distress signals, no survivors, nothing. For decades, historians puzzled over what had happened. Some speculated that it was sunk by Allied aircraft. Others believed it had escaped with Nazi officials and gold, attempting to reach South America. Post-war rumors swirled that certain U-boats had been dispatched to Argentina, carrying high-ranking Nazis and hidden treasures. But without evidence, these remained stories whispered in conspiracy circles. It wasn't until modern sonar mapping began that any trace of U-3523 re-emerged. In 2018, Danish researchers from the Sea War Museum Jutland discovered an object lying 123 meters deep off the coast of Skagen, Denmark. The sonar image revealed a submarine, mostly intact, buried nose first in the seafloor. It was later confirmed. The long-lost U-3523 had finally been found. The discovery sparked a new wave of questions. What was this submarine carrying? Why had it traveled so far north when Germany was already collapsing? And most importantly, what would researchers find inside? Preparing for descent. To explore U-3523, the Danish research team used advanced ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, fitted with cameras, sonar, and robotic arms.
Researchers released these renderings of a German U-boat found on the seafloor just north of the country's coast. The submarine is believed to have sunk on May 6, 1945.
This was no ordinary dive. At over 400 feet deep, the waters were cold, dark, and unforgiving. Even modern divers couldn't stay there long, so the only way to explore was through machines. The mission began early one morning aboard the research vessel Vina. Weather conditions were calm, the sky a pale gray, and the North Sea eerily still. Engineers double-checked every seal, every motor, every tether cable. Once submerged, the drone would be alone in absolute darkness. Any malfunction could mean losing it for good. As the ROV descended, lights pierced the gloom. Marine snow, tiny flakes of organic debris, drifted through the water like falling ash. Pressure mounted. Communication between the crew and the drone was maintained through fiber optic cable. Every meter deeper meant more silence, more weight, and less margin for error. Finally, sonar began to register a shape. A long, narrow shadow appeared on the monitor. The outline was unmistakable, the smooth hydrodynamic hull of a submarine. the excitement on deck was palpable. Decades of mystery, now within reach. When the ROV reached the wreck, its headlights revealed something surreal. The submarine's bow was buried deep in the sand, as if it had driven straight into the seabed. The stern, tilted upward, remained largely intact. The conning tower, its command center, was still visible, adorned with encrusted barnacles and soft coral. It was as though time had stopped the moment it sank. Inside the iron tomb. The ROV hovered cautiously around the wreck. Its cameras recorded every angle, feeding live video to the surface. The hull bore holes from depth charges, evidence of an attack. Records later confirmed that U-3523 Matreyi sunk by a British B-24 Liberator bomber using depth charges just 1 day before Germany's surrender. As the drone approached the hatch, silence fell across the ship's control room. The manipulator arm slowly brushed away sediment. The latch, rusted for decades, refused to budge. Then, with gentle pressure, it cracked open. A burst of debris clouded the camera. When the visibility cleared, the drone's lights revealed an interior frozen in time. Control panels lined with corroded switches, half-melted gauges, and dials still locked in their final positions appeared in the beam. Loose cables dangled like seaweed. A collapsed bunk floated near the wall, its mattress long dissolved. Tools, personal belongings, and even fragments of boots and clothing lay scattered. Further inside, the drone found sealed compartments, one of which caught immediate attention. It was reinforced with thicker steel and appeared separate from crew quarters. Wartime blueprints confirmed this area was not standard on all U-boats. Some Type 21 submarines had modified vaults for special cargo, usually intelligence documents or prototype equipment. The discovery of this sealed vault turned the mission from routine documentation into potential revelation. What had the crew of U-3523 been carrying so close to the war's end? The hidden vault. When the ROV directed its lights into the vault, the team could barely believe what they saw. Inside were boxes, perfectly arranged, sealed shut, and untouched for 80 years. Time had preserved them under the sand and cold seawater, wrapped in layers of corrosion and sediment. Using its mechanical arm, the drone gently lifted a thin metal lid. Beneath it were bundles, squared shapes wrapped in oilcloth. When brushed lightly, traces of faded ink appeared, handwritten German script. These looked like documents, preserved by the sealed environment. The drone's high-definition camera zoomed in. On one tag was an insignia, a faded Nazi eagle. The excitement on the research vessel rose instantly. The team documented everything meticulously. They avoided any direct disturbance. Every movement was recorded for scientific and legal integrity. In Denmark, shipwrecks from World War II are protected heritage sites, meaning no artifact can be removed without government approval. Scanning deeper, the drone identified cylindrical containers, some with screw-top lids. Initial readings showed traces of organic residue, possibly fuel samples, chemicals, or biological material preserved in airtight conditions. The mystery deepened. Was U-3523 transporting experimental substances? In another corner, what looked like a briefcase-sized box glimmered under the drone's light. Its outer plating bore both numbers and letters, perhaps inventory codes or serials. Could this have been an intelligence transport case? For now, researchers could only speculate. Wartime rumors and escape theories. To understand why U-3523's vault matters, we need to revisit the decades of rumors surrounding it. After World War II, whispers circulated that certain German submarines had escaped to South America carrying Nazi officials, gold, or secret documents. One of the most famous theories involved Argentina, where several former Nazi officers eventually surfaced in later years. In this swirl of stories, U-3523 became a ghost ship of fascination. It was said to be one of the last U-boats to leave port before the war's end, possibly on a special mission. Some reports suggested it was carrying valuables and passengers attempting to flee Germany's downfall. Others imagined it was transporting experimental technology, perhaps even components for secret weapons that were never completed. When Danish researchers discovered its resting place, it was located far off its recorded route, nearly 10 nautical miles north of where it was believed to have sunk. That deviation fueled speculation once again. Was it heading toward Norway, a known Nazi fallback zone, or even farther north? Historians caution against taking such theories as fact. There's no solid evidence of passengers or gold aboard. However, the sealed compartments and unusual route cannot be ignored. The timing, just one day before surrender, also raises questions. Why would the crew risk sailing at all? What orders compelled them to go? Even now, experts debate whether U-3523's final voyage was a desperate attempt to escape or a delivery mission gone wrong. The vault inside might hold that answer. Deep-sea forensics. After the initial discovery, the ROV recorded detailed 3D scans of every visible surface. These images were later processed to create a digital reconstruction of the submarine's interior. Marine archaeologists studied corrosion layers to estimate how long compartments had remained sealed. Chemical analysis of sediments helped confirm which objects might still contain readable material. One critical finding was the near-perfect sealing of the vault door. The low oxygen environment had slowed decay dramatically, meaning paper or fabric inside might survive in legible form. This gave historians hope that letters or orders could still be deciphered. Meanwhile, acoustic analysis of the hull revealed that U-3523's damage came from a single depth charge, not multiple strikes. This aligned with the Royal Air Force's mission report from the 6th of May, 1945, which recorded a Liberator bomber dropping depth charges on a submarine 20 miles north of Skagen. The accuracy of that log, combined with modern evidence, finally closed the question of how U-3523 sank. But one enigma persisted. Why was the submarine still running a mission after surrender orders had already reached most German bases? Was communication lost or deliberately ignored? Researchers began searching archives for intercepted signals and naval orders from that week. Some fragments suggested a handful of U-boats had gone rogue, continuing operations under outdated orders. U-3523 may have been among them. A glimpse into the crew's lives. While the drone continued mapping, it found remnants of daily life: utensils, cooking pots, boots, even fragments of personal items. These artifacts painted a human portrait of the crew that once lived and died inside. Life aboard a U-boat was claustrophobic: foul air, sweat, diesel fumes, and near-constant fear. Sailors often slept beside torpedoes, ate cold rations, and lived in damp darkness for weeks. In one compartment, the ROV's lights revealed what looked like a framed photograph, face down, in silt. It was impossible to tell what it depicted, but the idea alone humanized the wreck. These were not mythical villains or legends. They were people trapped in history's darkest machinery. Naval historians later confirmed U-3523 was commanded by Captain Willy Müller, a 33-year-old officer with prior experience on earlier submarines. He and his entire crew of 58 perished when the U-boat went down. For decades, their resting place was unknown. The discovery allowed descendants and historians to finally mark it on maps, turning rumor into closure. Knowing that these men spent their final hours inside that steel coffin lent gravity to the drone's exploration. Each artifact recovered or recorded wasn't just evidence, it was a message from the past. What was inside the briefcase? Among all images captured, one object stood out. The mysterious metal briefcase found near the control section. High-resolution scans revealed it bore the markings Geheim, secret, and serial numbers inconsistent with regular naval issues. Inside, visible through cracks, were smaller components, possibly electrical circuits, and a rolled strip of film-like material. Speculation erupted that it might have contained prototype technology. Some suggested it was part of Germany's wartime research into radar jamming or encryption devices, fields that were highly classified during the late war period. The Germans were known for pioneering advanced communication systems, including the Enigma machine. Could U-3523 have carried a more advanced prototype? Another theory held that it contained financial or intelligence data being transported to an alternate base. In 1945, the Reich's intelligence network was collapsing, and many units tried to secure or destroy sensitive records. If such information survived underwater, it could shed light on forgotten networks and escape routes. For now, the briefcase remains untouched, sealed under Danish heritage law. But the 3D scans and X-ray spectrometry readings continue to provide valuable clues without disturbing the site. The combination of secrecy stamps and non-standard material composition makes it one of the most tantalizing finds aboard U-3523. Expert reactions. When the findings were presented to maritime experts, reactions ranged from excitement to cautious skepticism. The Seawar Museum Jutland released a statement confirming the discovery's authenticity and structural mapping, but emphasized that no artifacts had been removed or tampered with. The images, however, were enough to ignite debates across academic circles. Professor Jacob Lauritsen, a Danish maritime historian, called it the most perfectly preserved example of Germany's technological ambition and desperation at the war's end. Others compared it to finding a time capsule frozen mid-action, revealing how advanced engineering had outpaced moral restraint. Military historians also noted how U-3523 symbolized a transition in naval warfare. Its innovative battery systems, streamlining and sonar-evading hull influenced post-war submarine design globally, including early Cold War submarines built by both NATO and Soviet forces. But among all scholarly discussions, the question that resonated most was, what exactly were they carrying? Until someone officially opens that vault or briefcase, the world may never fully know. Separating myth from reality. With a subject this dramatic, myth-making comes naturally. Online forums and amateur historians quickly spun tales about Nazi gold, secret weapons, and even escape attempts involving high-ranking officials. Yet, the team behind the discovery remained careful. They stressed that no gold or human remains were confirmed on camera. What was found were artifacts, paper materials, machinery, and sealed containers, worthy of study, but not sensational. However, history does show precedent for U-boats carrying valuables. U-534, for example, was found off Denmark in the 1980s and contained encrypted equipment and documents. So while gold bars and relics make headlines, the real treasure lies in historical data, the tangible connections to decisions made in those final chaotic days. The Seawar Museum team continues to balance public interest with scientific ethics. They publish data transparently, provide peer-reviewed updates, and allow museums and universities to participate in analysis. This balance between curiosity and respect ensures U-3523 remains a monument, not a spectacle. In that respect, the wreck of U-3523 is not just about mystery, it's about method. It reminds us how facts, when carefully handled, are far more fascinating than rumors. What the drone revealed about the sinking. Footage from the ROV provided clues not just about what was inside, but how U-3523 sank. The forward section's collapse pattern and damage radius matched a single underwater detonation from a depth charge. The stern remained remarkably intact, suggesting a quick, catastrophic implosion. The crew likely died instantly. The submarine's trajectory indicated it was moving fast and deep when struck. This aligns with RAF records of an aerial chase, suggesting the crew was attempting to dive to evade radar detection. Their speed, combined with the blast, caused the front section to bury itself headfirst into the seabed. To marine engineers, this moment tells a story of technology meeting its limits. The U-3523's hull design could endure deep pressure, but not the violence of wartime explosions. Its destruction preserved its secrets, sealed compartments compressed tight, locking away history until rediscovered by 21st century technology. It's chilling to think. The last seconds of U-3523's life were frantic, desperate, and silent. What the drone sees now is their frozen aftermath, a submarine frozen in time. When the drone's lights first touched the hull of U-3523, the entire command center aboard the research vessel fell silent. There it was, a shadow of steel resting in the cold blackness, tilted slightly to one side, its bow half buried in sand. The image was so crisp, so hauntingly complete, that it almost seemed impossible this submarine had been underwater for nearly 80 years. The researchers could see the outline of its periscope, the contours of the torpedo tubes, and even faint traces of markings once painted proudly on its exterior. Time, it seemed, had stopped the moment it sank. And that stillness, that frozen silence, told a story no textbook ever could. The pressure of the sea had crushed parts of the outer hull, yet much of the interior appeared intact, eerily preserved in the frigid low-oxygen environment of the deep Baltic. This lack of oxygen had slowed the decay, keeping metal parts recognizable, even delicate components still visible. As the cameras glided past the command deck, it looked almost staged, like a scene paused mid-action. Knobs, gauges, and levers sat in their original positions, untouched since 1945. It was a submarine caught between two worlds, one of history and one of eternity. The water around it felt thick with memory, as if time itself had congealed to protect it. Marine archaeologists often describe such discoveries as moments in amber, a fragment of history preserved by nature's hand. And in this case, it felt especially true. U-3523 was one of the most advanced submarines of its time, designed to travel long distances silently and efficiently. Yet, all its cutting-edge machinery, its secret designs, and its wartime purpose had ended in quiet defeat. As the drone's camera drifted past the navigation room, the irony was palpable. The instruments built to guide it to victory now guided historians toward understanding. It was no longer a weapon. It was evidence. Inside the wreck, the footage showed small, haunting details. An officer's chair still bolted to the floor, a tangle of wires coiled around rusted consoles, and a storage shelf where a single ceramic plate rested untouched. Each object carried the weight of human presence, a reminder that this wasn't just a machine but a place where people lived, feared, and waited. Some experts noted that the submarine's design was far more sophisticated than others found from the same period, with unique compartments suggesting experimental modifications. This hinted that U-3523 may have been part of an elite class of U-boats intended for long-term missions, possibly ones that were never officially documented. As the team studied the footage, one archaeologist whispered, "It's like they're still here." And in many ways, they were. The submarine wasn't just frozen in time, it was a sealed vault of memory. Every rivet and bolt represented the labor of engineers, the ambition of a collapsing regime, and the final breath of men who never saw daylight again. The water had become their grave, but also their guardian. Even after decades, U-3523 remained uncorrupted by chaos, politics, or myth. It simply was. A perfect snapshot of 1945, preserved in silence. For the scientists watching from the surface, the feeling was indescribable. It wasn't just about discovery anymore. It was about reverence, about witnessing the moment history decided to stop moving. Echoes from the past. When the deep-sea drone's lights first swept across the shattered hull of U-3523, it felt as if the ocean itself was exhaling a long-held secret. The images transmitted back to the surface weren't just data. They were whispers from another century. Barnacles now covered the steel that once roared through the Atlantic. The insignia that once represented a regime's power now sat faded, eroded by decades of salt water. For the researchers watching the monitors, it wasn't just a wreck, it was a time capsule, perfectly preserved in the stillness of the deep. Every rivet, every twisted pipe told a story of urgency, fear, and finality. It was as if the ghosts of that era were reaching out, reminding humanity that history doesn't disappear. It just sinks deeper. Inside the control room of the research vessel, there was silence as the team analyzed the footage. The AI-assisted sonar imaging revealed compartments that had never been opened since 1945. One chamber, located near the stern, showed a faint glimmer of metallic objects, possibly tools, or maybe ammunition. Another scan picked up strange rectangular outlines, perfectly aligned, suggesting storage crates. Historians immediately recalled the rumors that U-3523 had been one of the few U-boats capable of carrying special cargo. Though the images didn't confirm anything extraordinary, the very idea that these compartments still held untouched remnants of the war stirred something deep within the team. It was more than curiosity. It was the realization that they were peering directly into the past, unfiltered and untouched by modern interpretation. Among the recovered fragments, the most haunting were the personal artifacts, pieces of uniform fabric, a rusted officer's buckle, and shards of porcelain cups from the mess quarters. One diver described it as a museum at the bottom of the sea. These were not just objects, they were echoes of men who once lived, ate, and hoped inside those narrow steel corridors. Some must have believed they were serving a cause, others likely knew the war was lost. And as the submarine sank, those individual lives and choices froze in that final moment. That's what makes deep-sea archaeology so emotional. It doesn't just uncover machinery, it uncovers humanity. Even the soundscape of the dive carried an eerie poetry. The drone's propellers hummed softly, mixing with the low creaks of the wreck's corroded frame. Each vibration seemed to reverberate through time, like the pulse of a history that refused to fade away. The research team later reported that certain compartments had collapsed inward due to immense pressure, but strangely, some corridors were still intact, preserved in near-perfect symmetry. As the light traveled through those passageways, it felt almost cinematic, like walking through a frozen moment in history. For a brief instant, it was possible to imagine the submarine as it once was, engines roaring, orders being shouted, the tension of pursuit hanging in the air. Perhaps the most powerful echo came not from the steel, but from what it represented. U-3523 wasn't just another lost ship. It was a symbol of how ambition, fear, and desperation can drive humanity to build machines that outlive their makers. It stood as a silent reminder of how close we always stand between progress and destruction. And as scientists looked at those haunting images on their screens, they couldn't help but wonder, what will people centuries from now say when they uncover the relics we leave behind? Will they see echoes of arrogance or evidence of understanding? The past speaks, but it also listens. And in the deep silence of the sea, the echoes from U-3523 seem to carry one message above all. History never truly sinks. It waits. Lessons from the deep. The discovery of U-3523 isn't just about war relics, it's about memory and how humanity confronts its past. Each new dive teaches scientists how the sea preserves stories, how technology extends human reach, and how fragile truth can be when left unguarded by time. It also shows the importance of restraint. The temptation to sensationalize discoveries is strong, yet the most powerful moments come from quiet observation. The photograph in silt, the sealed letter, the rusted switch still in position. These tiny details tell us more than legends ever could. For young engineers and historians, U-3523 is a case study in both innovation and humility. It proves that even the most advanced machine of its time can end up a relic, and that what we build often outlives our intentions. Revisiting the Myths 1. Last time. Even after all the photographs, sonar maps, and hours of underwater footage, the myths surrounding U-3523 refuse to fade away. In a way, the submarine's story has taken on a life of its own, shaped not just by history, but by imagination. When divers first released high-resolution images of the wreck, some viewers swore they could see the outline of a crate lodged near the command room. Others believed the blurred shape was a human skeleton, still clutching a logbook. None of those claims were ever verified, but they reignited a fire in the public's fascination. People weren't just interested in a sunken U-boat, they wanted to believe it hid something more, something the world wasn't supposed to find. Historians, however, keep returning to the evidence. The ship's final log entry, found decades earlier, clearly stated its last course, northwest from Denmark, attempting to escape Allied detection. There was no mention of treasure, gold, or secret passengers. And yet, the timing of its disappearance, just days before Germany's surrender in May 1945, continues to fuel suspicion. Could such an advanced U-boat, built for long-range missions and powered by experimental engines, really have been on a simple patrol run? Some experts think not. They argue the model's range and capacity hinted at something else, perhaps a mission far beyond the North Sea, maybe even to South America, where many high-ranking Nazi officials later surfaced. Still, as the Danish team revisited the wreck with modern AI-assisted imaging, the mystery became more technical than mythical. The data painted a precise picture of the submarine's final moments. Pressure collapse, implosion, and rapid descent. No signs of explosion, no structural breaches that would suggest combat or sabotage. Every image reinforced one truth: the ocean floor holds no conspiracies, only stories buried in salt and time. Yet even that conclusion hasn't stopped people from asking questions. Every Reddit thread, every YouTube documentary, every speculative article keeps looping back to the same haunting thought. What if something was removed before the wreck was discovered? For those who followed the myth of U-3523 for years, the discovery was bittersweet. On one hand, it confirmed what historians had suspected all along. The sub had sunk under natural wartime conditions. On the other, it robbed the mystery of its most tantalizing element, the possibility that it had escaped. For decades, treasure hunters and Nazi-era conspiracy theorists had imagined the vessel resting somewhere off Argentina, carrying crates of gold, or even the remains of powerful figures fleeing justice. The wreck's location off Denmark should have ended those stories, but instead, it just redirected them. Now, the question wasn't whether U-3523 escaped. It was what it was carrying before it sank. Even the archaeologists involved in the study admit that myths serve a strange purpose. They keep history alive. They make people look deeper, question more, and care about stories that might otherwise fade away. And so, revisiting the myths one last time isn't about proving or disproving them. It's about understanding why they existed in the first place. The legend of U-3523 isn't only about a submarine. It's about humanity's need to believe that the past still has secrets waiting to be uncovered. And maybe, somewhere beneath the silt and the cold silence of the sea, a few of those secrets are still waiting. The journey forward and what to watch. What comes next? The team plans more dives with even more advanced drones, smaller, more nimble, able to penetrate collapsed corridors. They aim to decode letters, analyze chemicals, and perhaps retrieve small artifacts for conservation. They hope collaboration with German archives might reveal the missing keys to decrypt names or codes. They seek naval logs, reports of lost U-boat missions, and even family archives of U-boat officers. They may partner with universities for full analysis. Conservation labs will carefully manage any retrieved artifacts, gradual desalination, structural stabilization, and archival documentation. Some items might end up in museums under restricted display, with encrypted content redacted until final peer review. Also, this mission may encourage similar explorations. Other rumored wrecks of U-boats might now receive focused drone searches. The precedent of careful, transparent methods could open doors to new underwater archaeology. At the same time, authorities may impose new rules, more regulation of drone dives, heritage protection zones, and required permits for underwater exploration of war relics. The mystery remains far from solved, but with each dive, each image, each decoded document, we inch closer to giving that silent submarine a voice. What started as a sonar blip became a journey into the past. A deep-sea drone slipped into a sunken Nazi U-boat and uncovered a sealed vault full of documents, currency, experimental gear, and glass vials. Objects that might rewrite elements of wartime history. The discovery remains partly mysterious, speculative, but undeniably fascinating. Now I want to hear from you. Which item from that vault do you think holds the greatest secret? And why? Let me know in the comments below.